Oh, that's right. Okay. At 6:04, I call the meeting of the Board of Adjustment Tuesday, August 17th to order. First thing, I'd like to do a roll call. So start off, Brad,
Present.
say your name and say you're here.
Brad O'Donnell here.
Brooke,
Jim Beneke here.
Gary Spital here.
Brooke Brown here.
and Keith Martinson here. Okay. I guess we open up to public comments. So do we have any public comments? If not, I will close public comments. The next thing we have is what's this, Amber, or Ashley, what's this consent agenda all about?
The consent agenda is an option to put items that basically aren't controversial or require, so it provides the ability to consider several items at one time. And so typically in the boards and commissions, the only item on the consent agenda is the minutes. Sometimes the city council will have other items.
Does anybody else have any other items besides the minutes? If not, I will ask for a motion that we approve the minutes for June 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
Yeah, okay, Jim moved. Is there a second?
This
Brooke seconded. Is there any discussion on the minute?
I didn't second. I have a question.
Sure.
I have changes to the minutes.
Well, after the second, we'll go over changes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a second?
Well, if there's changes, we should probably hear the
Well,
before we
do the motion, the second, then we.
And then you have discussion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, then, okay, what is anybody have any discussion?
I have discussion. This is
Okay.
Brooke. Discussion.
Go ahead.
Thank you. On page 2, where it says Keith Martinson motion to approve the consent agenda, and it shows that 3 yes votes and Brooke Brown abstained. I would like to add abstained as she was not a member of the Board of Adjustment at the date of the December 8th meeting.
Okay. Who's, Brad, are you secretary?
technically, but I think that position is kind of
The city
doesn't really exist anymore.
The city secretary serves as the secretary for the Board of Adjustment.
So I'm assuming she's taken down these points.
She's taken down these
Yes.
points, and please, everyone, remember the minutes. We also have a video and audio recording. So if people want to go back and listen to the meeting verbatim, they've got that ability to do so. The minutes are supposed to be pretty brief and just hit the highlights.
Okay. Okay, Brooke, anything others to talk about?
Yes, on page 2, the third bullet from the top, Mary Turman, I believe it's Mary Timmerman. I believe the last name is incorrect there.
I will confirm and make that change.
Okay. And then because this is, I do have some detail with regard to the 3 different actions that the board took. And I do believe it's important to state these in the minutes correctly, because the minutes become, if there were to be an appeal or someone have to look at the minutes are the order of the Board of Adjustment. So I do think it's important to get it correctly stated. In the middle of the page, it said Brooke Brown motion to dismiss the appeal. And then it said,
On page 3, Brooke?
yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not page 3, page 2. It's the third bolded statement on the page from the top.
That's on my page 3.
It has 2 at the top. I have 2 pages 2.
Okay.
All the pages are page 2.
Oh,
Okay,
I'm just
corner.
counting my pages. I don't have page numbers.
Those are all item numbers, so they correspond to the item number on the agenda. That's probably why they're all 2.
It's the third page of the document, the same that had it had Terman instead of Timmerman.
Okay, go ahead, Brooke.
States page 5 on the left-hand side and page 2 on the right-hand side at the top.
Oh, go ahead with your change or your,
It says, Brooke Brown motion to dismiss the appeal because it is untimely filed. And then it says this motion failed for lack of a second. I believe that this motion failed for lack of a second should follow the 2 sentences below because there was discussion of that motion. And then acknowledgement that it failed for lack of a second.
okay,
Okay, you see that there's a line that begins Brad O'Donnell asked.
yes,
In the second line, it says adjacent property owners having a common property line must agree. I think we should insert common property line with the Westlake Hills Athletic Club. And then it would read, must agree to it in writing for it to be, and strike valid and insert granted.
I'm happy to go back and double check those. If it was exact wording though, that's generally what I try to use for the motion.
Okay, I did not have time to do that, but if the motion was valid, then if that was how it was stated, I would not change it. And then where it says Brooke Brown discussed the stated criteria that she does not believe met the request. I believe that my statement was specific, that I stated that I did not believe findings and then listed the findings of section 107.492 of the code had not been met by the applicant. I would restate that to read, Brooke Brown stated in opposition to the motion that she does not believe findings 1, 3, 5, 7 or 7 of section 107.492 of the code have been met by the applicant.
okay,
And that same statement would be the statement I would suggest for each of the 3 motions granting the variances, the 3 variances.
I will work on these changes and we will bring them back at the next Board of Adjustment meeting for approval if that works.
works for me. Brooke, you have something else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will then ask for us to table this until it's looked into and changes, and we'll bring it back to the next board meeting. Is that okay? Do I need a motion on that?
Could we motion or withdraw the motion on the table?
Sure, I will
approve the
withdraw my
minute?
motion on the table and we'll look at it at the next board meeting. Is that okay?
I,
It would
That
me.
works.
The proponent for the motion should be the one to withdraw.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, thank you. So with that, the motion is withdrawn and we'll bring it back to next board meeting. Okay. Regular agenda, item 3. A public hearing, discussion, and possible action on the variance for the City Code of Ordinance, section 107-35. Oh, wrong thing. That's the minutes. Here's the agenda. Okay, regular agenda 3, discussion, possible
hey,
action. Yes,
I'm going to ask a favor. I think 3, 4, and 5 are there's some housekeeping things and they don't involve the applicants who are here. And so maybe it would be best if we took up number 6 and then number 7 and then revisited 3, 4, and 5.
okay,
That's okay.
works for me. So item number 6, the public hearing, discussion, and possible action on the request for a variance from section 107-76A of the city's code of ordinance to consider the yard depth at the curb rather than the street right-of-way line for the front yard of 5015 Timberline Drive. So I guess we open up to public discussion. So do we have any public discussion of this?
I suggest, Keith, that we consider 6 and 7 together. I expect much of the discussion will be common to both.
Okay, I think you're absolutely right on that, Brooke. Okay, number 7 is public hearing, discussion, and possible action on the request for a variance from section 107-76A of the city code of ordinance to consider the yard depth at the curb rather than street right-of-way line for the side yard of 5015 Timberline Drive. So we have those 2 items for discussion. Open for public discussion. Do we have any public discussion of this item? So do we have someone present anything?
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting used to the formality here. This is Angus Littlejohn and my wife, Nancy Littlejohn. How y'all doing today?
Okay, why don't you state who you are as besides your name, or the owner of the place or architect?
Yes,
Or what?
yeah, we are the owner of the property. We acquired the property on December 30th of 2020.
Okay, thank you.
And we've got also with us today on the Zoom meeting, Ryan Burke from A Parallel Architecture, who is working with us on the design of a home for the property.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yep. So, we've had a little bit of further discussion internally here. And so I think the only one we really want to address today is item 7, which is the side yard. I believe I don't have the agenda in front of me, but I believe number 7 is the side yard. I think we want to revoke our number 6. After kind of further consideration, we are looking for a variance request on the Peak Road side yard. Based on, when we evaluated the property and worked with a mayor surveyors, their survey presented to us showed a 15-foot setback on that side of the property. And, that was obviously a big consideration, for our young and growing family, as, we took in consideration the size of the lot in terms of what we wanted to be able to build. And, we were, very excited when we had that survey in hand about, the large lot size and the ability to, construct our forever home. And so we're looking for a variance to kind of allow us to reset or I guess align with what we got in the survey from Ameris surveyors. And then, further, I'd say, as we've been working on the development of the design with Ryan and his partner over at A Parallel, our hope is to develop a courtyard style property that centers around a large elm tree right in the middle of the property, and put a pool in there as well. And what our hope is that by getting that 5-foot additional variance, it will permit us to have a little bit more space between the pool and the elm tree. Hopefully, I'd say enhancing the health of the tree.
By protecting the root system.
Yeah, by protecting the root system.
So I'm looking at your plan here. So on the one, the side yard variance, so you're looking at you want to propose the 15-foot setback from the property line, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then you all are planning to stick with the 35-foot front yard setback?
Yes,
30 feet.
Ryan.
Ryan, I think it's
30 feet.
30 feet, I believe,
There's
right,
a-
correct, Ryan?
It's
There's a-
30 feet plus a 15-foot right of way. So it's 45 feet off from the front.
Ah,
And then
correct.
there's the 35-foot deeded setback.
I'm sorry, could someone state that again? I was not, I'm not sure I heard it correctly.
Yeah, so the hard part, Brooke, is on our property line, it doesn't actually line up with the curb. There's a large right of way that's kind of in front of our property line, technically from the curb to where our property line starts. So on the timber line side of the property, which would be considered the front yard, there is about a 15-foot right of way between the curb and our property line. And then there's a 30-foot setback from there beyond to where we can start construction. We are not looking to adjust that one. What we are hoping for is, or what we're seeking a variance for, is on the side property line where there's a 10-foot, I'm doing a little bit of rounding here, right away. And then we're asking for a 15-foot setback off of that side property line, which begins 10 feet within the curb.
Keith, can we have presentation from Carrie Kaler, our Development Services Director, to speak to the city's code and explain the variance that's being requested of the board?
Sure. Go ahead, Carrie.
Right.
Good afternoon, everybody. So if you look at, I'm going to refer to, it's titled Corner Setback Example. I feel like it's the easiest to refer to. You'll see that you'll see the curb, and then you'll see a dashed line that serves as the property line that's noted. And then you'll see two different setbacks. You'll see the 15-foot proposed setback and the 20-foot setback. And what you'll see is that the city owns right of way that extends all the way around the property, and their property line starts behind that right of way line. So when I'm looking at these setbacks, I'm measuring from that property line out rather than the curb. Now, sometimes, depending on the lots in the survey, the property line is at the curb, and sometimes it is not. So sometimes the property line is at the curb, and the city still maintains right of way between the property line and the buildable line. And then in this case, the property line starts further back. So that because of that, that's adding an extra 9 feet, 8 inches onto the existing setback. Now, this is a corner lot. It forms a block with the property behind it on Rollingwood. So that corner lot setback is 20 feet. And so as it is with the current setback, that building line would be 29 feet, 8 inches off the curb. Their proposed setback would still have them at 24 feet, 8 inches from the curb.
Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but that 30-foot setback on the front lot line, wouldn't that be, I guess, wouldn't the 35-foot setback that's written on the plat on the survey there, the deeded setback line, wouldn't that take precedence over the 30-foot?
I have that question.
Can you rephrase? Can you ask me that again?
Sure. So on the survey that they sent us, there is a 35-foot deeded building setback line. And since the deeded, I'm pretty sure that the deeded setbacks take precedence over the cities, if that's correct. And so since they're not really trying to do the front yard anymore, I guess it doesn't really matter, but I guess it would matter for where the corners meet.
Sure.
Of the two setback
I'm going to refer that to Ms. Santee, our legal.
Has she joined us?
Yes, she's here.
Okay. I'm not seeing her on my screen.
On my screen, she's joined by phone, but she's still muted.
Sorry, I'm trying
Okay.
to maneuver too many devices to get this pulled up. So this, I mean, the
Did you catch the question, Megan? Which would
I'm
take,
trying to find the survey. The city, I mean, the Board of Adjustment is considering the request for variance from the city's requirements. It cannot request a variance from the deeded requirements.
Maybe I
So
could,
on the survey, it is, go ahead, I'm sorry.
in that line, could I ask the Little Johns, do you know what that deeded setback is? Have you examined or had your counsel examine that or your architect examine that?
To be honest, there's also a line that says a 30-foot building setback. So
Yeah, we're not as certain about that one. We had noted the 30-foot setback that was probably.
it's shown interior to the schematic.
What I see is that with regard to the front setback, it says 30-foot building setback with a volume and page number, as if that might be on a plat. And the same thing, if you look at the top of the page, the same thing with respect to the 15-foot building setback, and it's got a volume and page number.
so I did pull Timberline Terrace Section 1 plat, and it was not shown.
Is that the volume and page number that is referred to on this survey? Is the plat
I
at
have to
that?
run a title search, but I did search the real property records, and their plat is Timberline Terrace Section 1. And I pulled the Timberline Terrace Section 1 plat, and it is not shown. So it would take a further title work, I believe.
If I'm trying to be quiet here because I don't want to, y'all know much more about your city than I do. I don't live in Rollingwood, I live in Austin. I can tell you, if it helps, how we got here, at least from when we started the project. When we first got the survey, the first thing we did was try to suss out why the setbacks, to varying degrees, some to our advantage, some not to our advantage, did not align with the zoning code. Our office has done a few projects in Rollingwood that I think have all been pretty successful. We've never asked for variance before. We've always just worked within the setbacks in the code, given just blank surveys with no setbacks written one way or another. All those were permitted and have been built. This survey did not align. We reached out to Rollingwood to figure out what that was. The backstory that I gleaned from those various conversations was that a lot of these setbacks predated a zoning code that was introduced. That zoning code was a blanket overlay of how setbacks were to be in Rollingwood. I was told at that time, as far as I could understand, that the 35-foot setback would be a replatting. There would be a requirement because the plat is different from that code. But we were simultaneously advised when we questioned the 15-foot setback off of Peak, which is also on our deed, we were told you can get a variance for that because the 20-foot zoning code overrules the any deed or subdivision from the 50s. The surveyor was unable to produce any of these documents. There's a note on the survey that has all sorts of disclaimers saying we did the best we could, but we couldn't figure this out. We pushed back on the survey because we thought it was very weird that they were showing two different front yard survey lines. The human side of the story is that Angus and Nancy went out to a lot. There's this huge, beautiful lot. They want to, build their forever home. Their architects immediately started giving them bad news about how their lot was actually way smaller than what was perceived, because there's like a 55-foot right of way that a lot of the other lots that they had looked at didn't have, and they didn't read this. They didn't see the survey as that limitation on the house that they could build. So we immediately started talking about, well, how do we build a house that can fit their family without cutting down all the trees? And also try to keep this as much of a one-story house and low scale to the neighborhood, and not a huge, double-decker thing fronting the road. I think we've done a good job working together to achieve that. In that process, there have been questions that could be solved through a variance process. We decided to go through that. Even today, we were talking about, well, do we really need the timberline variance, or do we need the, what is the best thing for the house, because it's still in design. Sure. But these questions are very much what we are trying to answer tonight. All I can say is we are trying to find our way through what I would say is kind of a clunky survey, but also figure out how to move forward. My understanding in conclusion was replat the 35 to a 30 that meets the front zoning code. 20 would come off peak. We would kindly ask for a variance for that. And that brings us to today. But I know it doesn't answer any questions, but I'm just trying to provide some color to why we're here. We are not professional developers maxing out a bunch of stuff. We are probably a little more naive and uneducated than a lot of the people in Rollingwood that are doing that, because we're just trying to build a home for a family.
So if I understand correctly, you're stipulating that the 35-foot building setback that's on the deed is in fact correct, and you're going to replat the lot to try to get it to 30 feet, and that you're really asking for a variance from the 20-foot right of setback that would prevail over the deeded 15-foot setback.
Yes.
And do we know for sure that the references for the deeded setback are to something the city of Rollingwood can waive? That's my question.
Well, it should be in the records of the Travis County, but
And I know it will be, because that's why it's got a page and volume and page.
yeah.
I just don't know who's the other party to it, to know whether it's something the city of Rollingwood can change.
And our understanding of this process, fully agree with you. Our understanding of this process would be that conversation would happen in we're unable to dig this up. We are not asking for y'all to release any deeds or subdivision tonight. If anything, the only thing we're asking tonight is that conversely, the 15-foot setback on this survey, Rollingwood has a 20-foot. We're asking if 15 is possible. That may end up being, if we get bad news from a title search regarding the front on a private deed restriction, that may be the thing that gives this project the ability to actually go forward. We are still early in the design process. We're trying to figure out what we can build, and the early questions resulted in more questions. We just have not been able to figure out why the surveyor put this on here, and the surveyor doesn't seem to know either. It is a bit of a mystery, but it's a mystery we were going to pursue in parallel with Carrie and her team on a replat.
Well, so it looks like to me you could find what these setbacks, what the deeded setbacks are, because there's a volume and page number, and you can go to the clerk's office and find those. And what it seemed like the surveyor was saying is that he couldn't find the original plat, as I read his notes. He says, if you look under graphic scale right here in the middle, underneath that, it says this survey, the original plat is illegible. And I'm not sure if the references to the deeded setbacks, I don't know if those refer to that original plat or if they refer to something else, frankly. That's kind of what my question was. that gets to the substance of it. If they're to the plat, then it is something that a replat will fix. If they're not, I'm not sure where we are.
Wonder if you misread that 30.
Let me ask it this way. Do you intend to do further work on what those restrictions are and to replat this lot?
Brooke, I think that is our intention. Yes, it would be to replat the lot for the timberline, side, to, try to clarify that one. But as Ryan, said, we're really today, seeking, I think guidance on the variance on the Peak Road side of the property, and then we would be running parallel on the replat. But one might not lead to the same conclusion on the other.
Right, and you are confident where the property line is.
Well, as good as my survey is, yes. I wish I could be a little more, yes or no on that, but clearly this survey has created all sorts of fun questions that, is extremely disappointed that this become this confusing. I mean, this was never, I don't know if you all know the property. It's got that huge yard and where you don't even own 50 feet of it. So it just never really crossed our mind of the limitations that would be kind of set with that corner lot. But we're going to keep running parallel, but just trying to knock off, I think, one thing at a time here.
Well, let me ask this. I don't know if someone else is ready to move on, but I do have some questions.
Well, let me say, Brooke, and relative to the survey, the surveyor is indicating that he found marked corners, and that's usually pretty solid evidence that the boundaries of the property are known with a high degree of confidence. So I think really the issue is about setback, not the property boundaries.
Right, and the note in this corner says something to the effect, or it says, the deeded setbacks do not alter, edit, remove any or all, or the city setbacks don't alter, edit, or remove any or all of the deeded covenant setbacks. They're in addition to those setbacks. So until we know what they are, I don't know if that's a correct statement either.
To kind of add on, that 35-foot building setback, I'd like to know if that's something that could be removed by replatting or not. I'm not sure how you would remove that setback, because I might consider, if no one else has that 35-foot setback and no one knows what that setback is for, I might consider that a hardship in giving them that 5 feet back on the Peak Road side, the side yard. But if they're going to replat and it can be removed, then I kind of want to understand more on that 35-foot one, and if it is possible to take these out, or if they're going to be forced to stick with that 35-foot setback.
I follow you, and I think
Yeah, I agree. That would be good to know.
Yeah. Here's
That 30 versus 35 feet, something that we could correct in a replat.
I think that's the open question, but I think what Brad's really getting at is what's the hardship? And in the absence of a hardship, it's hard for us to find in favor of a change to the setback.
Right, because what's before us tonight is what this board can consider.
well, I have a few other questions about the side setback. And the unless somebody else has something before them.
I was just wondering, process-wise, since we're still in public hearing, should we open it up to folks who would like to speak to these items?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, if anybody wishes to speak, please raise your hand. I do not see anybody who's joined by phone. I'm looking.
Mr. Van Babel appears he wants to speak, owner of 5012 Timberline. Jay, I think you're on mute.
You're still on mute.
Jay, I just,
Okay, I think I'm
Okay,
unmuted
now you're
now.
on.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak. I'm glad to hear that they're withdrawing their request for the Timberline street variance, and that's certainly the part that would affect me the most. As far as the Peak Road goes, I mean, one of the great qualities of Rollingwood, the reason why we bought a house and are building a house there, is that it had clearly defined lot lines, and the setbacks were clearly defined in your code of ordinances for anybody to see online. And we knew that we have an irregular shaped lot also, and we knew that we had a kind of a constricted building area, but we had our architects design something to fit in, shoehorn into that building area. But it's the setbacks that sort of determine the nature of the Rollingwood neighborhood. These large front yards all along the street, and so I'm just philosophically a little bit against changing those setbacks so that we have houses closer to the street. Also, I just want to confirm that, I mean, Rollingwood doesn't have any impervious cover restrictions, and I think that's the way they limit the impervious covers, by having setbacks that are, mandated from the lot line. And so, and it is just 5 feet they're asking for on Peak Road. So, it doesn't affect me that much, but it does affect the neighborhood in general. So that there'd be that much more impervious cover if we're building to an expanded buildable area. So I'm definitely against granting the variance on the Timberline side, but I understand that that's been withdrawn. So and I just have those objections to the granting a variance on the Peak Road side. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can, thank you, Jay. I think that's very much in line with the way that we see things as well. The process that started months ago in terms of trying to figure out, unfortunately, this lot was a little less clear. Our office was going by Rollingwood zoning code, and that's what we've done on past projects. And to be honest, I'm not sure I've ever even shown a survey before. When we were submitting, we said, here's the building, here's the setbacks, we're meeting all the setbacks, meeting all the previous coverage. This survey, conversations had already begun between the Littlejohns and Carrie. We kind of entered a little bit later. Questions are raised about what was what and where are the setbacks. This is actually, I should disclose just for fun that this is actually the second survey. The first survey, they showed all the wrong setbacks. Like the survey was just a total jumble. And we were like, what is going on? They're showing a 5-foot setback. We know that's, on the back property line, it was like a 5 or 10-foot setback, just stuff that made no sense. Not deeded stuff, not subdivision stuff, but just a surveyor drawing lines and, putting down things and then putting notes saying, don't take anything that I wrote very seriously. That started conversations with Carrie. It sounded like there were other projects in the neighborhood that had been talking about how the right-of-way varies between the street and the property line. So on some, I think the letter was that it's the lesser between the distance between the right-of-way and the house or the property line in the house. We started putting together some, looking at other houses on this very same street, thinking about how close are all the other houses to the street. This one is just particularly far set back, particularly on timberline. We have this huge grove of trees that's, you know, pushing us back even further. This corner of the lot where you can see the right of way, we have basically 75 feet from the corner curb back to the house, like massive setbacks, not just relative to the impression of the site, but the character of the neighborhood, things that are important to us, important to the Little Johns. As far as impervious coverage, our goal here to maintain this, what is the one magnificent tree in this, which is on the original survey, right behind the original house. In order to get a house and a pool on this, the solution was to really create a courtyard house so that we can maintain, you know, the tree's in the worst possible spot in terms of building a house, but it's a beautiful tree. So we said, well, let's try to line the house around this tree. And what that does is it gives you the big tree in the middle. It gives you the lesser impervious coverage because the inside of the courtyard is all grass. That courtyard actually opens up onto timberline. The full width of it is all open as a big front porch on our drawing. But as a result, you end up trying to just get, you're building a little bit wider. The size of the house grows by like, I think we calculated like 25 or 50 square feet because what we're growing is a courtyard and not the house. None of that is to argue with anything you said. I fully agree with you. It's very hard to communicate the quality of a design and its impact in the neighborhood on these drawings. My firm wants to be remembered and acknowledged for people that did right in all the neighborhoods that we did our work on. And it would crush me to find that a neighbor was not happy with a solution. So we are here today really to try to figure out a path forward that everyone's happy with, as opposed to, well, not as opposed to anything. That's why we're here. So all your comments are appreciated. We obviously need to figure out more about what these restrictions are otherwise. But it's
Ryan,
it's been a little messy.
I hate to interrupt you. Thanks for that. I want to let everybody know they have the opportunity to speak right now and want to make sure that that's available for the public. And so if there is anybody else from the public who would like to address the Board of Adjustments, we are, just to clarify, we are under item 7 currently, as the applicant asked to withdraw item number 6 from consideration, just to clarify for the record. So item number 7, we're still in the public hearing. And if anybody else would like to speak to this item, I don't see anybody else. So Keith, if you would like to mark the time and close the public hearing.
Hey, Amber.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Sarah.
Sure.
My understanding is that there were some other comments that were submitted either in writing or by phone to the city or to Board of Adjustment members. And it seems like that would be helpful to present those comments as well.
Sure.
On the public meeting.
Sure. Carrie, would you like to just briefly touch on some of the comments or all of the comments that you received via phone and by email, please?
Absolutely. Let me get those letters in front of me. Give me just one moment. So I received one comment from the owners of 5013 Timberline, Gregory Connor, in opposition to this variance, and that is in the packet. We received a letter in writing from Mr. Van Babel, who spoke to you this evening. I received a letter from the owners at number 10 South Peak, but they then rescinded their opposition because they thought it was a different address. So that did go out, and then they corrected and asked that that be withdrawn. I received an email this afternoon at 5 o'clock. from Karen Carlson of number 4 South Peak, letter in opposition, which we'll be sharing to the board. We just got that right before we started the meeting, but I will share that with everyone. I believe that's all I received.
Right, Keith, would you like to mark the time and close the public hearing?
Okay, it is 6:50. I will close the public hearing. You know, in the agenda, it doesn't have anything after the public hearing.
It continues with discussion and possible action. So now it's up to the board to continue to discuss if they would like and take any action they deem appropriate.
I would agree, but usually that's an item on the agenda, I thought.
We used to do it separately, but we have combined them all into one sentence.
Okay. So anyway, any discussion from the people on the committee? Brooke?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I appreciate you, Little John, for being here and answering questions that the board has. And I'll say to Ryan, I love your house, Rollingwood Drive. The one just off the corner of Rollingwood and Ridgewood. That's a great house. But I have a question. And the diagram we got today, instead of showing it shows a point in the southwest corner of the building where it says 30-foot setback line. That do you still intend to have the building come to a point that would meet the arc of the property line, or come to a point very near the property line? Or are you carving it back from the property line? I can't, there's a carved line now where that point is, you know, inside the point in the measure as to the property line, or as to the how far it is from the property line, but I don't know what you're intending to do there. So that's a question. Here's my concern about the difference between the property line and the curb. And that is, I serve on the Comprehensive Plan Task Force. And one of the things residents in Rollingwood really want is more walking areas and more paths. And if this property between the curb and the property line is owned by the city, then that is an area where a walking path might come, or a widened street access. And so my concern about the plan as I see it, and I'm not sure I understand it correctly, the building plan, is that you would have that part of the structure come all the way to the property line. So in the event the city were to decide to use that right of way, you would be right against what might be a new curb. So I think that is something that troubles me. And then there's a second, this is another question. As I see the plan, it looks like the swimming pool sides has a side that backs up to the Peak Road setback. And Carrie, this may involve you. I think there's also a setback requirement that applies to swimming pools that are on a corner lot that have a side adjacent to a street. Have you had it?
There are, and I do not have building plans or pool plans yet. And so I am reluctant to enter into any discussion that would be discussing their specific design. That's something that we would go through with the zoning review. But to clarify, as far as that side setback goes, that city-owned right-of-way appears to be 9 feet 8 inches. And that would be 15 feet off of the 9 feet 8 inches. So that would be as far as their building would go if you were to consider that variance. That the nearest that the corner of their house would be, if approved, would be 24 feet 8 inches from the curb. So there would be room for a sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on that, just because the property line curves doesn't mean that the setback doesn't prevail. I mean, the setback has to curve too. You can't build a building right on the property line just because the property line has to curve. So that, as shown, this building is sitting in the setback and is in violation of the setback requirements.
That corner would.
Yeah, the corner. I mean, you just because the
Sure.
property line curves, it doesn't mean that the setback applies no matter what the shape of the property line is.
Sure. That I'm not talking about the corner encroachment there. What I'm talking about is the general distance as shown on the corner setback example. If you look at the side measurements, so the current distance from the curb, current setbacks is 29 feet 8 inches on that side. The variance they're requesting is 15 feet. That still maintains, that's still 15 feet beyond the 9 feet 8 inches of city-owned right.
Could I add in there just for food for thought? I know that the comprehensive plan task force has been talking about connectivity and sidewalks, and this is not the only property where the city owns right of way. And I'm not privy to what was considered when these properties were platted. But just note that typically hike and bike trails are 8 to 10 feet. And so if that is something that the city would ever want to do in the future, it would be important to preserve our right of way for that purpose, or I guess any other city purpose in the future.
I would like to go back to the question to Ryan Littlejohn's about if I'm reading this correctly, then your pool would be here. The blue square is a pool, and there's a city ordinance that says this is 107-35C. It says on a corner lot, no swimming pool shall be constructed or maintained in the area between the side setback and the side lot line that borders the street.
Brooke, sorry to interrupt you, but we're not really here to talk about the pool.
Well, here's my concern about it. If we grant a variance for a 15-foot setback, do we come back when we have a plan and find that the pool variance is also needed at that point? Do they come back? Because
that would be a completely
or
separate
not.
item, correct?
Well, then we would, that's the concern I have. I don't know. I don't want to grant, if we were to grant a variance to the 15-foot, then do we come back? Does that automatically grant a variance for the swimming pool zoning requirement? I'm seeing everyone shake their head no. Okay. Then I need to also ask the question on the 15-foot variance, would you still have a corner of the building come to the front property line where it arcs, where it turns the, where it circles? I don't know what's the proposal.
Right. I don't want to speak over my clients here. Do you want me to try to address this? Okay. So we up until 12:30 today had designed a house following the setbacks that were on the survey. Those setbacks form a acute triangle. We received a message from Carrie and Amber today saying that someone had pointed out that the setback should actually be a radius coming back. We immediately called around and said, okay, I can't redesign the entire building right now, but can we have a conversation about, first of all, we were following the survey, so it was enlightening, to say the least, that the survey would be considered incorrect by y'all tonight. Because we're kind of simultaneously referring to the survey for things, but we're also dismissing it when it is wrong. And so we're kind of left in limbo in terms of interpretation of setbacks. After a conversation with the Rollingwood, with Carrie, I put together this new drawing, which is fresh off the press, to illustrate that for what it is worth, our property line is a full 52 feet back from the corner curb. The setback from that would yield a 75-foot setback. And if you compare that to both setbacks off the actual street, which is 44, it's a full 30 feet further. And so short of having an answer for anyone tonight, we put this out here to demonstrate that. We did not ask for a variance because we didn't even realize it was a thing. But this is again, this is like new information that we were trying to reconcile. But we're also trying to look at this and say, well, if the goal is, regardless, yes, sidewalks, but if the goal is to have your building a certain distance back from the sidewalk or the street, what is the fair amount? Is it 40, 30, 75? This may be something that a lawyer needs to address with the surveyor, or, in terms of why all their setbacks are drawn like this. But we did this today without a new building to show you, because we recognize that what came up, we wanted to show and have a conversation about it. But I don't think we're ready to have a action on it. I can tell you, Brooke, we don't plan to build over the setback if the setback is wrong.
Sorry to interrupt again, but I'd like to, we've kind of gone off the edge of 15 versus 20-foot side setback line. And that's kind of really all we're supposed to be discussing at this point. Whether that corner, if it needs to be corrected in the drawing later to be curved, that's fine. If it doesn't, that's fine. But I think we need to try to focus back on someone making a motion to approve or deny the variance for the 15-foot setback.
I would like to add some comments before that. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this is a pretty decent sized lot for Rollingwood, and the shape is irregular, but and likewise, we've seen, like in cul-de-sac lots, substantially more irregular shapes. And the property lines in many of Rollingwood's lots do not sit on the curb. So that's, and in my experience, land surveying and civil engineering for a long time, it's pretty common that the property line is not at the curb. So, I find that as a difficult argument to heed. And we've denied setbacks for pool arguments and other things for much smaller properties. So I'm just feeling that I have not seen the hardship here, so I can't see how we can approve this.
Jerry, would you like to make a motion?
Am I allowed to respond to that? Just out of curiosity, I don't know how this formality works.
I believe, well, it's up to Amber to decide whether, I thought the public hearing was over, but go ahead.
Typically, no. Typically, the discussion after the public hearing's over is just amongst the board.
It's up to the chair. He was running the
what?
meeting.
Well, my statement is, I agree with you, Jerry, that we have property lines throughout Rollingwood that are not on the curb lines. Pretty much that's common. In fact, in our neighborhood, we have a 10-foot setback throughout the whole neighborhood, which is back from the curb. And our house is set back 10 feet plus 30 feet beyond that. So it's a 40-foot set, effectively a 40-foot setback. My only statement is, it seems strange on the front of this house, they have a 15-foot setback from the right of way. And then the curb, it's up to the arc on the curb is 52 feet. I don't know who drew these property lines or these setback lines, but I think they got crazy with their compass on the corner. That seems awful far back for the curb. I mean, I don't know why they didn't draw the straight lines closer to the actual curb and then draw a small little arc. And that's usually what you see in Rollingwood property on the corners. The arcs are fairly small. They're not this humongous. But I agree, that is city property for 52 feet. And that corner of the house is right against city property for what it's worth. At least that's what it seems to me. But I also agree with you, Jerry, that it's pretty common in Rollingwood for people to want to build their houses closer than our regs say you should build the house closer. And we have turned them down before because of that. And so the question is so are you putting a motion on the table then, Jerry?
I move that we deny this request.
So then do I hear a second? Without a second, then I guess I'll kill the motion. Is there additional discussion? Yes, Brooke?
Motion, Keith.
You have a motion then?
I'll second the motion.
Oh, you'll second the motion. Okay, so we have a first and second that we deny this. Is there more discussion? Do I have to, well, since we're denying it, I don't need to go through all these 7 criteria, do I, Amber?
No,
Okay,
unless I'm wrong, Megan.
so then,
Well, I guess I certainly feel like if the applicant has not established or not provided sufficient information to sway the board that those criteria have been met, that should at least be delineated.
so is it okay to go ahead and vote on this, I guess? Or
Sherry, do you want to modify your motion to include the language that Megan just provided, that the applicant failed to meet the 7 criteria as established?
Yes, I'm happy to have the motion amended that way.
And Brooke, are you happy to accept that amended motion, to second that?
I'm happy to second it. I will say, this is addressed to the chair, I'm not sure that the Little Johns had an opportunity to present everything they wanted to present, because we asked some questions and then we went to public comment. So I would feel more comfortable if the Little Johns were asked that question and then we take up any further action that the board might want to take. But I'm a bit uncomfortable with that. I think they are given the right to make a presentation. I'm just not sure they had the opportunity to do the full presentation they wanted to do.
so are you suggesting we ask them to finish the presentation tonight or come back in a future meeting?
I think we asked them to present what they want to present tonight.
Okay. Amber, do you have a problem with that?
Of course not. It's the will of the chair.
Okay. Angus, do you want to present some more information? Or are you going to let Ryan, if Ryan wants to jump in here too?
I think we could use some clarification from you all, if you don't mind, on is it a list of 7 things that were required? I'm sorry, Ms. Santee, I don't think I quite understood what it was that you last said.
Certainly, under the code for the city, under 107-492, for variances before the Board of Adjustment, the board may have to consider, and they must make findings on these requirements. And there are 7 set out in B, 107-492B. And typically the board must make those findings on the record to support the granting of a request for a variance. And my recommendation was, if they felt like the applicant has not met those requirements, they can state that in general, or they can identify specifically 1 through 7, which of those requirements that the applicant's testimony and evidence has not met, in supporting their motion.
Okay. Then I guess my next question would be, out of those 7, do you all feel that we have met any of the requirements, or do you feel that we have failed to meet all 7 of them? So that we can at least address them individually in order to better understand.
Jerry, at your motion, do you have any thoughts about which ones of these 7 variances they're not meeting?
I'll be glad to read those out if that would be helpful for the board.
Sorry, yes, please read them out. I can't lay my hands on them at the moment.
Absolutely. So section 107-492B states, prior to granting a variance in a zoning district other than a residential district. Sorry, excuse me. Prior to granting a variance in a residential district, the board must find that 1, a special individual reason makes the strict application of this division impractical. 2, granting the variance will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this division and will not be injurious to adjoining properties or the neighborhood, or be otherwise detrimental to public welfare. 3, the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or injurious to the property in the area. 4, there are special circumstances or conditions such as topography, natural obstructions, aesthetic or environmental considerations affecting the land involved, such that the strict application of the provisions of the division would deprive the applicant of a reasonable use of his land. 5, the granting of the variance will not have the effect of preventing the orderly development of the land in the area in accordance with the provisions of this division. 6, if applicable, there is sufficient water and wastewater capacity and fire service available to serve the applicant's land as developed under the variance without detriment to the other property within the city. And 7, the circumstances or conditions from which relief is sought are not solely of an economic nature.
Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, so I'm trying to. I took those as fast as I could, and I'll just try to address it. I mean, I think Brad asked a question. It was one that's important, or at least the way I thought about this whole process is what was the hardship that was imparted upon us through this process, and why we're seeking the variance. I mean, we're not real estate people. We're looking to build a home for our family, and when we got the survey, before we closed the home, we took that into account. I mean, that to me, unfortunately, we took that at face value, and we assumed it had been corrected. It clearly wasn't, which is extremely disappointing. I mean, that we understood there to be a 15-foot setback off of Peak Road, behind the property line, which is already inside the curb.
So that was our deciding factor in purchasing the home.
Yeah.
So step 1 that.
But when I kind of listened to those 7, and I don't know if I can actually get them all in short order appropriately here. But, 1, I don't think it's going to impact the public health or safety, because of already the property line behind the curb. I hear what the committee is saying here about it's not irregular for the property line to sit inside the curb, but there's already going to be an additional 9 feet 8 inches. So I don't think that should impair public safety or access to water or wastewater on that front. That's kind of addressing 6 and number 3. Special situation. In terms of what we're trying to do is a big part of what we love about Rollingwood, I'm sure everybody else on this Zoom meeting enjoys too, is the topography and the trees. And, as Ryan had pointed out, there's, kind of a wonderful elm that sits smack in the middle of the property. And, we are really trying very hard to design, primarily a single, floor home that preserves that tree and really doesn't kind of create this monstrosity that, would allow us to have, space for the family, but also really kind of preserve, I'd say the beauty of the neighborhood.
It's also the one true tree on that property that is not a trash tree or that has, so we're trying to really take care of the one true treasure that, God gifted us on that property.
And I don't.
We're not doing it for economic reasons.
Yeah, there's no economic on that one.
And then we do not, and I guess, our assumption perhaps foolishly was that if we are at 8 inches back from the road, that it would not be hindering the neighborhood or the property, as I'm sure there are other properties within the neighborhood or the Rollingwood community that are set back the same amount.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to, trying to, keep with the aesthetic. And, Ryan and his partner Eric, one of the reasons why we chose them is because of the wonderful work they did in Rollingwood, and, trying to, make it fit the neighborhood as best as possible, and, and kind of not, I'd say, overwhelm, the nature, the trees and so forth. And, I think that is definitely a benefit that we've been trying to seek here in being able to allow us to, really maintain as much of a one-story property as possible, throughout the build.
I'll say we purchased in Rollingwood because we do love the aesthetic and we do love the feeling to it, and we don't want it to change. We truly value that, and it's why we're there. And so, very respectfully, we understand your wishes to preserve that too, as you've all clearly been there much longer than we have and have a true love for it. So, I hope that our explanation can
at least provide some rounding out to, why we're here today. And I just want to say, Brooke, thank you very much for at least affording us the opportunity to kind of, give our presentation in full. I apologize for being a little bit all over the place, but thank you.
We do very much appreciate that.
If I could give my 2 cents here, I think as you're starting to see, it is kind of hard to see a hardship for moving the setback line 5 feet. But that being said, I do see a hardship on the corner. If you do have to make your setback line curved, and you're going to have a 75-foot setback from the curb, that's pretty ridiculous.
Thank you.
I would definitely see that as a hardship, but that isn't what's on the table tonight. That being said, I might think it might be a good idea if, instead of us bringing this to a vote, that y'all maybe take this off and then come back with a to the Board of Adjustments to ask for a variance to get the corner of your building closer to the corner of the curb. Because like I said, I don't think there's many homes that are 75, 100 feet off of the corner. And I think that's something we could work with. But I'm not sure the votes are going to swing your way to getting the extra 5 feet. And not having one strike against you might help for the next group that comes up. So just my thought, it's your call. Maybe someone else can speak to that as well, but that's kind of how I see it.
I appreciate that guidance, and I personally, I think Mason will definitely take that to heed. And if others are welcoming to that suggestion, I think we'd like to follow that.
Mm-hmm.
Brooks, you had something to say?
I think withdrawing this variance request and coming back with once you've had a chance to think through these comments would be great. I would also say I'm not sympathetic to the property between the curb and the property line personally, because that's property the city owns and it's property that might be put to a different use. And so I think you should think about that as well. You know, it is far back from where the curb is today. But if you look at the corner of the curb at Rollingwood Park, there's, you know, a landscaped corner on that street that connects with a walking area. I think what happened here on was that at some time, a long time ago, Peak Road was designed to continue on to Rollingwood Drive. And when that didn't happen, you know, I can't speak to this for sure, but I think the reason why this corner is odd is because the original plat had Peak going all the way to Rollingwood Drive, to Bee Caves Road, and that changed. So I'll just give you that food for thought.
Brooke, I remember when the road used to go down that hill.
Okay, then it did in fact.
It did in fact go down the hill, steep hill.
Right, right. And
Oh.
this may not be the greatest time to say this, but we do welcome you to.
Well, Jerry,
Thank
do you want
very
to
much.
pull
I
back?
appreciate it.
You want to pull back your motion?
Can I ask one question of legal, just my own knowledge? Are trees, protected trees, a potential hardship? Can that be considered as a hardship, Megan?
Carrie, that's a good question. Certainly if, you know, if that is something that the city encourages, whether or not it has a specific ordinance in relation to heritage trees, but if that's something that is important to the city to be able to maintain trees of a certain size, or if the city, you know, offers alternatives to cutting down trees of a certain size, and the location of those trees kind of, which is unique in this situation, you know, you've got to do a workaround. That is certainly something the board could consider.
Okay, that may be something that we want to discuss when we get to the rules and the later discussion in the meeting.
Okay, so do we still have a motion on the table or not?
There is currently a motion and a second on the table.
So do we vote on it, or can we just pull that? How do you work this on it, Amber, at this point in time?
I know that Brad and Brooke recommended to the applicants to withdraw their requests. Megan, any issues with the applicants withdrawing and then reconsidering and coming back to the Board of Adjustment?
Amber, I am double checking your code really quick to see if you don't have any restrictions on when an application can be withdrawn in the process. If you don't, then no, there wouldn't be an issue with that.
Okay, I don't believe we do, but let me double check.
I believe we do.
We've had it happen before.
Angus, I got a quick question where they're looking. Is your house, is it 2 stories or 1 story?
So if you're looking at the design here, and I apologize, just this schematic,
Yeah.
this one right here.
Yeah.
What you're going to see is half the property is going to be a 2-story, so the one that's going to be kind of working towards down Timberline, and then the rest of the property is intended to be a single story.
So from the Timberline perspective, it looks all to be 1 story except for a singular room at the front entry on the side.
Yeah.
So what's this little on the lower left-hand side by the pool? What is that little, is that a standalone room?
Well, it's going to be connected via a covered patio, but the intent was, you know, we're obviously going through the design still. It would be a guest room for our folks. We're both not from Austin, so wanted our folks to be on the first story to be able to come visit and see their grandkids. And then I work from home part-time, so it was going to be kind of a detached home office so that our youngest, who likes to bang on my door all day, I can actually focus.
Okay, like a little casita or something like that.
I guess it's all connected, so
Yeah.
just
It's really conceived to be a 1-story house with a breezeway through. So the idea originally was that we would front load the entire house on the front, and on one side would be Angus's office and the guests, and the other side would be the family. We felt that was too much of a wall on the street. We also wanted to put the pool in the court, and we didn't want to have a pool just, surrounded by walls. So the idea was to create a breezeway, more of a Texas vernacular breezeway that connects those two, and then have a porch that basically opens up to the neighborhood, a place that there's a place to engage. As a result of that, Angus is afforded a little bit more privacy from his cute,
Okay.
but I can attest slightly loud dockers.
Megan,
Amber?
all I can find is section 107-498. So if the board were to deny, the applicant would
Right.
have to wait 180 days to bring it back.
Correct.
So if we don't deny,
Right,
but we
so-
just table it, there's no problem with that.
I'm not seeing an issue with if they withdraw their request. Tabling's another
I
question.
think there is a difference between tabling and withdrawing the request. If they
Okay.
table it, then that means it's still active, and therefore we have to follow the statutory requirements of it being a decision being rendered by the board within 60 days from the date they filed it. If they say, you know what, we're going to go back to the drawing board, we want to withdraw the request, we're going to go see what we can do with lines and with our survey and double check everything. I think without a decision having been rendered, they could certainly do that and then decide if they want to come back. Maybe the appeal is for 4.5, a variance request maybe for 3 foot or 4.5 foot or something different. That can certainly come back before the board.
Okay, thank you. I'm not a lawyer because my words aren't too exact, but thank you so much. So do you all want to withdraw your request for this evening and come back?
Yes, we would, if that'd be allowable.
Okay, is that allowable, I guess? Okay,
Yes.
so we'll consider this request withdrawn. Is there any more discussion? Are we ready to adjourn the meeting? Oh, we got some
believe
stuff to
we-
talk about. Amber, do you want to talk about items, the other items?
We can. A lot of things were added, documents were added today. So if the board, and I know we have another meeting coming up soon. So if you all would like to take some time and review those documents, ask questions of staff in between now and the next meeting, we would be fine with that.
I would like to do that because I just saw them today.
Sure,
Yeah, me too.
totally understandable.
Okay,
Can I also ask on that last item, Megan, do we need to have that motion withdrawn as well since the request was withdrawn?
I thought
I withdraw, if I need to withdraw the motion, I withdraw it.
Okay.
okay, it's
I
done.
apologize. Thank you.
Okay, with that, if there's no more discussion, is there a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Okay,
Second,
Jim seconds. Okay, as of that, the meeting is closed, and I thank you all, and Angus, and your first name, please?
Nancy,
Nancy.
yes.
And Ryan, you do have some nice, hey, that's a nice house on Rollingwood Drive. It is pretty.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I'll hopefully see you all in the near future.
Thank you so
Looking
much for
forward
your
to it.
time.
Thank you all very
Thank
much for your
you.
time today.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
bye.